Welcome back to the table and to the Castle of the Quest, a place where we explore the original 1974 D&D rules, and I report on how I have applied them in my ongoing OD&D campaign. In the previous session, my party of characters, known as the Questing Knights, led their two new companions, couple of drunken rakes who just happened to be 8th level fighters, into the dungeons beneath the Castle of the Quest, where they immediately descended through a trapdoor to the 2nd level of the maze. Not long into the delve, they encountered 4 conjurers with 4 armoured foot guards. They managed to slay the guards, but the conjurers fled, abandoning 400 gold pieces. Next, the party discovered a room where 4 giant lizards dwelled, which were dispatched with ease thanks to the superior force of the rakes. The lizards were guarding 4 gems worth 2,600 gold pieces in total. After defeating the lizards, the party found a secret passage in the southeast corner of the room, which led down a long corridor, but the party were forced into retreat by 3 spectres haunting the secret passage. The party fled back into the large chamber, where the armoured foot guards lay slain, and they went through a western door into the lair of 2 Medusae. The party managed to kill them both, but in the process, both rakes and one of the party's elves, Thrandia Skyborn, were turned to stone. However, the survivors managed to escape from the dungeon with several heavy iron trunks full of gold coins. The party hefted them back outside slowly and loaded the coins onto the horses before heading back to the last redoubt to finish the most lucrative adventure to date. This brought the campaign, which I play using 1 time, to the 3rd of November 2023. That's right, I'm still catching up with myself doing these reports after suffering from a broken leg. With the great spoils lifted from the Castle of the Quest, there was enough XP to go around to allow both the party leader and magic user Ilara Nightshade and one of the clerics, Brother Bart, to progress to 2nd level. The rest of the characters just haven't been around long enough yet to earn enough XP, as the fatality rate for the Questing Knights treasure hunt is high. On the 31st of October, the party paid their monthly upkeep in accordance with D&D Book 3, which states player characters must pay gold pieces equal to 1% of their experience points for support and upkeep, until such a time as they build a stronghold. Across the board, this set them back 142 pieces of gold, which at least partially relieved some of the weight of their spoils. Next, I rolled up a new character to replace Thrandia, and in OD&D you always roll the ability scores straight down the line, 3d6 for each. The scores were not great: 8, 8, 12, 8, 10 and 7. So with the highest score being only average, which was a 12 wisdom, this character was to be a cleric, and from here on out shall be called Sister Galantia. This new character rolled 110 starting gold, which as a rule, when joining the Questing Knights, is pooled into a joint fund, which now stood at 11,973 gold pieces. A heck of a lot of gold. 335 was spent on equipment, replacing rations, improving armour, kitting out Sister Galantia, and so on. 2,800 was spent on running 2 recruitment campaigns to hire mercenaries, The party desired 6 armoured foot for a month's service and offered triple wages for the best chance of success. They received 7 applicants, but after 3 unsuccessful reaction rolls during the final interview, the offer of service was rejected. The recruitment campaign lasted 5 days, bringing the campaign date to the 8th of November. I have a pretty robust system for handling these recruitment campaigns, which if you want to know more about, so you can use the system yourself for handling recruitment in a fair and impartial way, then watch session 5 of this Castle of the Quest series. The party ran an identical recruitment campaign on the 8th, which lasted for 8 days. They had 6 applicants, but only managed to successfully hire 3. So essentially, a lot of gold was spent with only minimal success in hiring normal types into the party to strengthen it. Not to mention, these 3 armoured foot figures began their services with a -2 on their morale dice. But never mind, eh? The next challenge the party attended to was how to handle the sheer awkwardness of carting around so much coin, which still equated to over 8.5 thousand gold pieces in value. The party needed a money changer, but was one available in their base town. To figure this out, I looked at a few good resources. Firstly, the World Builder's Guidebook, which I've mentioned before. I used this book previously to mechanise a way to determine what services are available in a given settlement. For each type of service, there is a percentile chance for it to exist, and that chance should be multiplied by the number of blocks of 500 people and rolled on percentile dice to determine if the service is available. If the chance is over 100%, then there is always 1 per 100% plus a further percentage chance of another as per the remainder. This isn't exactly how it works in the World Builder's Guidebook, but is instead a simplification that I use in my OD&D game. I discussed this method in detail in session 9 of this series. Money changers are one of the services available in the Last Redoubt. Using AD&D money changing rules as a guide, I came up with the following simple OD&D rule. If a money changer is available, then low value coins can be changed to higher value coins and vice versa at typically 3% of the transaction. The party used the money changer to reduce the amount of weight in coins they carried. They were able to reduce their encumbrance down to 1,716 platinum pieces and 9 silver pieces, but still retained a gold piece value for their coins of over 8.5k. On the 16th of November, the party intended to return to the dungeon beneath the Castle of the Quest and continue to explore the first level in search of significant monster lairs. Ilara will carry the torch, Hilda will listen at and open the doors, Maud and Ascalante will map. The newly recruited armoured foot figures will take the front rank, followed by Viridis, Bart and Hilda. Bree Landell will float in the centre. The party entered the dungeon through the secret entrance situated on the island in the castle moat on the east side of the drawbridge. They descended into the dungeon via a ladder and found themselves back in a 10 by 10 room with a door on the west wall, still held open by a spike. They passed through the door and along a 20-foot wide corridor, which took them 70 feet west to an intersecting passage running northwest to southeast. They turned southeast and moved along the intersecting passage, hearing a scuttling sound coming from behind them, urging them along. After 50 feet, they passed a bent copper coin laying discarded on the ground. They then heard a groan somewhere ahead of them. They bravely continued along the passage a further 60 feet, then they ducked into a side passage that curved northeast 30 feet. The space opened up into a larger chamber to the north. They moved into it and pressed up against a section of the south wall, as they heard moaning coming from whence they came. On the north wall of the chamber there was a corridor heading straight. The party took it. The corridor quickly came to a T-shaped junction. They moved east but found dead ends in that direction, so were forced to backtrack back through the southern chamber, where they followed an intersecting passage to the east. Hilda listened at a door on the south wall, at the eastern end of the passage. The coast seemed clear. The strong dwarven woman pushed the heavy door open with ease, and they spiked it open on their way in. The air in the corridor beyond was dusty. They followed the corridor south for 50 feet, hearing a murmuring ahead of them, and shortly after a giggle emanating from a side passage to their right as they came across it. They hurried along to the south, and after about 40 feet, the corridor turned abruptly northwest. At this point, a wandering monster encounter occurred, as 6 kobolds were coming along the northwest passage, and managed to surprise the party at a 10-foot distance. As they were not obviously a superior force, the kobolds would act randomly according to a 2d6 roll on the Random Actions by Monsters table. A 12 came up, which was positive. The kobolds made a friendly offer: give them the dwarf in exchange for their lives. The party won the initiative and decided to attack. Something interesting came up here. The party were protected at the front by 3 armoured foot figures, who were all normal types. In the original D&D rules, which includes chainmail, 3 distinct categories of figures are mentioned, and these are normal types, supernormal types, and fantastic types. But what do these 3 categories represent? After studying each individual reference to these categories, I was able to decipher that normal types are figures with less than 2 hit dice who cannot go up in level. Supernormal types are figures who can advance in levels and therefore increase their number of hit dice. Fantastic types are figures who have 2 or more hit dice but cannot increase in levels. If a small melee is occurring between principal figures, i.e. supernormal types, or stronger monsters, i.e. fantastic types, then as Gary would recommend according to Strategic Review number 2, the alternative combat system should be used, which is based on fighting ability versus armor class. But what if a small melee is occurring between normal types, i.e. figures of less than 2 hit dice, that cannot go up in level? As this is the situation here, well, my presumption would be that the man-to-man system in chainmail could be used, which is a system based on weapon versus armor type. I gave this a go. The passage was only 10 feet wide, so at the most there were 3 figures abreast. So we had 2 ranks of kobolds, as there were 6 in total, which means there were only 3 able to attack the 3 armoured foot figures. I won't go through this encounter in detail, as it simply wasn't very important, and I'll cover combat again and again in more detail, as I have been doing thus far. But what does matter is the combat was influenced by the various weapon types. Who struck first and last was down to the class of the weapons being wielded by the combatants. The combat lasted 3 rounds before the kobolds were all killed, and one of the armoured foot figures was also slain. After the combat, the party continued northeast. After 20 feet, the passage passed through the centre of a southwest to northeast passage, and a grating sound could be heard somewhere in the distance. The party turned southwest, where the passage then turned abruptly north. The party stopped there to rest for a turn. Thus far, they had burnt through a single torch and had been in the dungeon for about an hour. The party moved up the corridor to the north, passing through a space choked with cobwebs, till they came to a large cog handle after about 60 feet. The cog handle opened a secret door, but there was a 2 in 6 chance that any figure operating it would fall into a pit below. So how did this come about? You'll probably recall, seeing as I mentioned it quite a lot, that I used the random dungeon generator by Gary Gygax that was published in Strategic Review in 1975. And as I've also previously said, I've customised it in various places to help better bring out some of the various nuances of the OD&D game. One change I made was that on the periodic checks table, a result of 20 used to be a wandering monster. Well, I'm doing wandering monster checks every turn, as the normal rules indicate, so I've replaced the entry for 20 with special feature. I discussed special features earlier in this series. In a nutshell, a roll is made for both a random feature and attribute, and the results are combined to form a new trick or trap with a 2 in 6 chance for characters to succumb. This method creates a wide variety of interesting things that make the dungeons come to life. After entering the secret door, the party found themselves back in the chamber they were in before, so they backtracked to the west and moved southeast. They could hear rats squeaking somewhere up ahead, and the corridor soon emerged into a 20 by 20 chamber with passages leading south and west. This chamber contained 4 zombies who did not surprise the adventurers and were 30 feet distant at the time of the encounter. The cleric Bart did try to turn them but failed. However, the party did manage to slay the zombies in 4 rounds without taking casualties. Following this encounter, the party discovered a room to the west containing 4 giant rats, which they slayed, but unfortunately the rats were not guarding anything of value. At this point, the party started to head back in the direction they came. They encountered 4 heroes wandering the dungeon. These heroes were of neutral alignment. They won the initiative, and due to their friendly reaction, they offered a bribe to the party made up of 50 silver pieces and 40 gold pieces. And the reason the encounter played out this way was down to a solo game rule I like to use when a monster wins initiative and rolls a positive reaction on the random reaction table, which works as follows. When a roll on the random actions by monsters table results in a positive outcome, the player should get to decide what that outcome is, and they may only choose from the following options. Receive directions, which allows the player to randomly generate more of the dungeon map, including room contents. I still need to work out the specifics of this. Lure the monster into service. I've covered the procedure for this in a previous video. Receive a bribe, which allows the player to roll on the random treasure table under distribution of monsters and treasure, and gain the amount of treasure rolled in the form of a bribe. It's up to the solo player to decide which of the above options are available, and this will depend on the type of monster encountered. On a cautious reaction roll, the player must pay a bribe instead, equal to 1d6 times 10 gold pieces per level of the dungeon. After the encounter with the heroes, the party left the dungeon, loaded their meagre spoils onto the raft, paddled back across the castle moat, and returned to the safety of the last redoubt. The party took 185 XP altogether on this delve, 110 from monsters and 75 from treasure retrieved. This is 20 XP each before bonuses, which were an extra point for 5% and 2 extra points for 10%, so nothing very significant. Additionally, Ilara and Bart are second level and were operating on the first level of the dungeon, so as experience points are relative to the level of the character versus the level of the dungeon, these characters will only receive 10 points of experience each. After this expedition, the campaign date was brought up to the 24th of November 2023, which was when I was in hospital with a broken leg, so progression stopped there for a while, but time in the game world does not stop, so I have some downtime computing to do. Firstly, on the 30th of November, the Armoured Foot Hirelings are due a loyalty check. They have a -2 loyalty score and roll a 6 -2, which is 4, so they immediately desert their employer and move on. Nobody levelled up on this occasion, so this brings us to support and upkeep. The characters must pay 1% of their experience points in gold pieces at the end of each month, so they will need to cover November, December and January. They can easily afford it, hence their hiatus from adventuring. They did visit the money changer earlier in November and exchanged their precious metals to platinum. They used their small change first and pay the rest in platinum pieces. Their carried coin is now 1,642 platinum pieces and 2 electrum pieces. I have opted for electrum to be worth twice as much as gold. The rules in Monsters and Treasure allow the referee to include this precious metal at either twice the value or half the value of gold, and I chose the option that will have a positive effect on encumbrance for obvious reasons. So this is where I am at with this campaign at the time of recording, and I will be picking it back up as soon as possible for further adventures. My approach from this point forward is to do some actual play rather than session reports, so I can show in more detail exactly how I'm playing OD&D solo. So I hope to see you at my table again. Have a great week, and I'll see you next session.